I hope you're in the mood for kissing, because I want to encourage you to kiss and make up. Did you know that there is actually a National Kiss and Make Up Day? It's August 25th, but these two fellows, or these two dogs, are not waiting. Yes, there's a national day for everything, but there is one for kiss and make up. There's another form of kiss and make up. If you're a Dua Lipa fan, there was a huge hit a couple years ago called Kiss and Make Up that she did with Blackpink. I'm sure you're all aware of that, yeah? So I'm talking about kiss and make up tonight because I'm very familiar with the concept of kiss and make up because I grew up in a household of 8 kids. I'm the youngest of 8. And for a while, my cousins lived with us, and they had 6 kids. So you can imagine how many arguments went on in that house, not on a daily basis, but on an hourly basis. And my parents had absolutely no interest in whose fault it was or who started it or anything like that. If there were 2 of us fighting, it was, all right, stop. If you're both fighting, you're both responsible, you have to kiss and make up. And I'm talking literally. I mean, we'd have to actually kiss and then say, sorry. So I'm very familiar with having to kiss and make up, and I want to talk to you about that tonight because we're in our series of 5 things every disciple must do or should do. And we've heard about, avoiding temptation, giving people a second chance. All right, I'm testing your memory now. What was the third one? But as part of this series, I'm going to talk to you about forgiveness because every disciple needs to be forgiving. That's just something a disciple should do, should be willing to forgive others. But it's not easy. It wasn't easy as a child, I hated, when my parents would, okay, you have to kiss and make up, I just absolutely hated it, because who wants to apologize, You always want to be right, or at least I do. So as disciples, we really have to be forgiving, and we also have to seek forgiveness, just as the prodigal son in today's gospel. We have to seek forgiveness. We have to apologize. But it's tough. It is one of the hardest things for us to do as human beings, because asking for forgiveness or apologizing is very intimate. It is a very intimate thing to do. It's one of the most intimate things we do as human beings. And it's extremely vulnerable. Because think about it, it's intimate because for me to apologize sincerely, I have to admit that I'm imperfect, I have weaknesses, and I'm asking you to accept me with my weaknesses and my imperfections. Now, that's a very intimate form of communication. It also makes me extremely vulnerable because you do not have to accept my apology. And if you reject my apology, I feel even worse than I did before I made the apology. So it's something very intimate, and it makes us very vulnerable. So it's hard to do, but we have to do it. But here's the good news. God is going to help us. And that's what today's gospel is about. The gospel today is essentially about if you make a mess, clean it up, right? If you do something wrong, take responsibility for it, make amends, do what you need to do to make things right. So let's look at today's gospel, and because I think that one of the quotes from the younger son who comes home is extremely important for us to look at. Because what it does say to us is that we don't have to be perfect in order to ask for forgiveness, right? Waiting till we're perfect and then asking for forgiveness it doesn't work. Because when let's face it, when are you or I ever going to be perfect on this side of life? Never. So don't wait till you're perfect in order to ask forgiveness. Because in the story that Jesus tells about the father and these two sons, the younger son who went off and, lived a life and spent all that money, he did not have a particularly perfect motive for seeking forgiveness, did he? Was his thought, oh, I really hurt my father, I want to make amends? No. What did he say? Coming to his senses, he thought, how many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food to eat, but here I am dying from hunger? What's his motive? He's hungry. Not the most perfect motive in the world. But yet, he is able to conjure up a very sincere apology. Because what does he say? I shall get up and go to my father, and I shall say to him, Father, I have sinned, taking ownership, against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me as you would treat one of your hired workers. Right? So, not the perfect motive, but yet this sounds like a very sincere apology. He's taking ownership of what he did wrong, and he's going to seek to make amends. That's what a disciple needs to be able to do. And it's hard. But as I said, God helps us in the process. God is going to help us. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have the perfect motive to seek forgiveness. But once we, in our human capacity, seek to make an honest resolution to change, make an authentic apology, God does the rest. God is going to help us. So let's look at the father in this gospel, because the father in this parable, this story that Jesus tells, represents God. And what does it tell us about? What does the passage tell us? Once the son started to make his way home, when did his father realize that the son was coming home? When he knocked at the door? No. Jesus says, when the son was far off. So what was the father doing? He was searching, seeking his son. A beautiful picture here. The father was out there looking for his son. That describes God. You know, we often think about our faith life as us seeking God. But that's if we think that's what it's about, we got it all wrong. No, we have a God who is seeking us. Is seeking us especially when we're lost. Right? And once we make that first effort to turn back to God, God's going to help us. Right? God's going to do the rest of the work. God's going to throw a feast. Right? If you ever come to me in confession, you know, if you hadn't been to confession in many years, and I've had as many as one person 70 years, right? And I usually say, all right, go have a party, go throw a party, go celebrate. And it's because of this gospel that I give that penance. That's the penance, you know. So don't wait, 20 years to go to confession, then Father will tell me to have a party. I don't mean to encourage you to do that. But what I am saying is, when somebody returns to God, no matter how far off they've been, the immediate response should be, let's celebrate, because that's what Jesus tells us God does in this gospel. But again, the apology has to be authentic, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. The motive doesn't have to be perfect, but there must be in there a kernel of desire to really make things right again. And we have to be careful, because there's a lot of phony or fake ways to apologize, aren't there? Right? So just like when we were kids, one really big excuse we'd use is, we were both fighting, but he started it, right? Right? So I get this in confession a lot. Somebody will confess a sin, but then they'll give me a whole list of excuses as to why they committed the sin, right? So that is an apology, but it's got a denial chaser, right? That goes along with it, right? So, but that's, so it's like you own up to it and just don't try to give me a list of excuses as to who started it or who was really at fault, just admit to what you did. Another one is what I call the politician or legal apology. It's, I'm sorry you feel that way, or I'm sorry that happened. So it sounds like an apology. I'm saying I'm sorry, but I'm not owning up to what? Any responsibility whatsoever. So that's your lawyer will tell you to apologize in that way. But as a disciple, no, it doesn't cut it. Right? It does not cut it. Here's another type of apology. I am so sorry. I feel so bad about what I did. I can't even eat or sleep because I am so sorry. I just don't know how you're going to forgive me. Oh gosh, I am just so sorry. Right? It's an apology, but who's the center of attention? Me. So, yeah. So there's lots of fake ways to apologize. But the gospel today, Jesus in the story, gives us an authentic way for a disciple to apologize. So let's look at the younger son's apology, or his movement back to the Father, right? So as disciples, we have to take responsibility for our actions. We recognize the consequences of our actions, and we resolve to change, right? So what did the younger son say? I have sinned against heaven and earth, right? There's no equivocation in there. There's no, yeah, but my older brother is such a pain in the you-know-what. I had to get out of that house, right? No, there's no equivocation. There's no denial chaser or anything. He took responsibility, right? I have sinned, right? And he recognizes the consequences. Right? I no longer deserve to be called your son. He realized that there are real, significant consequences to one's actions. Right? And then he's a resolution to change. Right? He says, treat me as you would one of your own servants. So life is going to be different. So there's an expectation of change, right? So that's what a true apology looks like. And again, we're human. We're not perfect, so we don't always have the perfect motive, and we're not always perfect people. But as long as we take responsibility for our actions, recognize the consequences of our actions, and resolve to change, God will do the rest. We don't have to wait till we are perfect, all right? So as we pray this Eucharist tonight, I'm going to think about where, areas of my life where I need to follow this formula, right? Because believe me, that list of fake excuses or fake apologies I just rendered, I've practiced each one of them, right? But I really need to own, who I am as a human being and realize it's hard, it's very intimate, and also realize that it is a growth experience. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but sometimes I've just, in doing this, right, recognizing I hurt somebody, or I said something inappropriate, or I did something inappropriate, and really making amends and seeking to change and taking responsibility. And when I do that, then I'm a better person. So that's the beauty of it. It's not only that you seek to restore the relationship with the other person, but I'm better off for it as well. And that's the wonderful thing that God does for us, when we seek to follow this formula, right? It restores the relationship, but it also makes me a better person, a better disciple. But it isn't easy, and so that's why we need to pray. That's why we need to be celebrating the Eucharist and recognizing that once we try, God is going to do the rest. So, as I said, at this Eucharist, I'm going to be praying for the grace of God to take responsibility, right? Recognize the consequences of my actions, resolve to change. And if I need to do that, I'm going to do that now. I'm not going to wait till National Kiss and Make Up Day on August 25th. It's 5 months away. I'm not going to wait. I'm going to do it now. I invite you to do the same.